Hi, everyone. I'm John Hornick. I am the Chief Strategy Officer of NScript, and I also wrote the book 3D Printing Will Rock the World. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the second annual Strength of 3D Printed Electronics webinar, which is sponsored by NScript and by Nextflex. We had a great program last year, so we decided to do the second annual this year, and if all goes well, we'll do it again next year. We have a great program and a great speaker lineup. Last year, we had great speakers from the U.S. military and from the government, along with some companies. This year, we're focusing on industry. We have speakers from across industry, both large and small companies doing cutting-edge work in 3D printed electronics. Thanks to everyone for signing up today, and congratulations on making it through the pandemic. I have just a few ground rules before we start. The audience is going to be muted. We're going to take questions at the end. We should have about 20 to 30 minutes for questions. All the questions will be in the chat feature. So if you want to ask a question, put it into the chat. You can address your question to a particular speaker, or you can address it to the whole panel. Speakers, you're all going to have 15 minutes for your presentations. I'll give you a 5-minute warning, and then I can give you a 2-minute warning, and then I can tell you when your time is up. So I'll just say, quietly while you're talking that you have 5 minutes and 2 minutes, and that your time is up. So now let's kick it off. I want to ask my friend and colleague and the CEO of NScript to give me your thoughts on 3D printed electronics. Then we'll introduce the first speaker.
John, thanks so much. We're pretty excited about this. There's been a lot of things that have happened in the past year besides COVID. We understand that COVID happened and sort of dominated some people's lives. But I think behind the scenes, there's been a lot of action. It's been moving in 3D printed electronics. And the thing that excited me the most, and what I'd like to really get out there for everybody, is the term 3D printed electronics is starting to come more commonplace. It has become such a commonplace term, if I could say that is actually has a market study on how large 3D printed electronics is going to be. And for someone like me, that's a good day. And so I'm excited that this is happening. And I want to welcome my very good friend and someone who I believe is pioneering in so many ways, blazing the trails and making it real as well, my friend Scott Miller from Nextflex. Scott, your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks very much, Ken. I'm really glad to be a part of the event this year. I attended it last year, and I found the content to be both really interesting and engaging. So I'm sure it's going to be that way again this year. Nextflex exists to strengthen U.S. manufacturing of flexible hybrid electronics, to advance the state of the technology and to help the transition technologies to both the DoD and to industry and commercial applications. We really think that 3D printed electronics is an important part of that. Flexible hybrid electronics, 3D printed electronics, we enable new form factors for electronics, and in doing so, that enables new function. And so, it's just critical we keep pushing these things forward. So, as a manufacturing innovation institute, we do a lot of different things. We convene the institute through our consortium, and anybody who's participating today that's not an Nextflex member, by all means, reach out to us and learn more about what that would mean for you. We run a lot of events and participate in events, and then we fund projects to advance the field. And so, as a community over the last several years, we've seen a number of big changes and a lot of movement. We've reached the point now where the first question we get is not whether flexible hybrid electronics, 3D printed electronics can do something. We lead with the questions now about the reliability, the standards, things like that. And that's a huge progress in the field, and we're going to keep pushing for that sort of thing. So, I appreciate the collaboration with NScript and with many of the other participants here today. Look forward to continuing that. So, looking forward to today. Glad to be here. John?
Scott, thank you very much for your comments. I'm now going to introduce our first speaker, who is Susan Trulli. Susan is a Senior Engineer Fellow in the Advanced Microelectronics Solutions Department of Raytheon Missiles and Defense Systems, and has over 40 years of experience in microwave microelectronics for defense, space, and commercial applications. She's currently on the Advisory Council of IMAPS. Susan is the recipient of Raytheon's highest technical achievement award, the Thomas K. Phillips Award for Excellence in Technology, also the IMAPS Sidney J. Klein International Award for President's Award, and the Society for Women Engineers Patent Recognition Award. So Susan, please make your presentation.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me?
Roger that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let me get this into slideshow for you. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah, after that.
Yes, okay, great. Thank you. So I'm going to give you more of an overview versus a deep dive today of some of the things we've been working on, in particular at RURI, which is the Raytheon UMass Lowell Research Institute. So basically, I'm going to go over who we are, what we've been doing and are doing now, and then where we see we need to go. And hopefully that's aligned. It seems to be aligned with the goals of today's webinar. So we've changed. Everybody knows Raytheon, I'm sure, that's on this call. But last year, in the midst of all the start of COVID, we shut down in March, and in April, they went ahead with the merger to form Raytheon Technologies, which was the union, essentially, of Raytheon Company and United Technologies. I'm not going to read all those numbers, but we were big, and now we're even bigger. This is the various business units that have emerged out of that. For people who knew the old Raytheon Integrated Systems and Raytheon Missile Systems, these have now been united into Raytheon Missiles and Defense, which is the largest single business unit of Raytheon Technologies. But we have Space and Airborne became Raytheon Intelligence and Space, and now we have Collins and Pratt & Whitney. All of these groups are very active and additive in various ways. And this is just to show you that obviously Raytheon Technologies sees the future in the additive world by the number of places across the country that have invested in additive manufacturing. Now, some of these people are doing more structural things, but if you see where I put the star and the gold box, that represents RURI, which is at UMass Lowell, where Raytheon R&D is working in partnership with UMass Lowell on printed electronics. Specifically, printed electronics for microwave applications has been our focus. There are people who are doing other things, but primarily that's been our focus. So what is RURI? Some of you may have heard of this, but it's a very different model for working with the university. I mean, I've worked with a lot of different universities. You give them a statement of work, you give them some funding, fund a graduate student or 2 or 3, meet with them maybe once a month to see how their progress is going. And it can be very interesting and informative, but it often kind of goes in a very different direction than maybe you'd originally hoped for. For the model we use here, we're actually have a floor of this Saab Innovation Center, which is the picture on the right, where both Raytheon employees and UMass Lowell students work in an ITAR secured floor and work cooperatively on innovation. So it's a very different model for working. It's been a great experience for, I think, on both sides in terms of patents, papers, and the talent pipeline. We've already hired 19 people out of RURI since this started. So a lot of benefits have come to us from this. And the other thing that goes in partnership with RURI is the Printed Electronics Research Collaborative. Now, this is not part of Raytheon. This is Professor Craig Armiento, who is one of the co-directors of RURI, is a part-time Raytheon fellow and a professor at UMass Lowell. And he and Professor Alkamar Kutlu started this Printed Electronics Research Collaborative specifically to help facilitate the pipeline in materials and industry to really help craft the partnerships from the materials, the printers, to the applications. So this has been very beneficial. Anyone who's interested in joining, you can contact me if you need to get in touch with Professor Armiento or Professor Arcutlu. I'm not going to go through the list of printers and various materials we have, but we do have a full complement of printers, characterization equipment, as well as all the things you need to develop materials. And also, very importantly, we have 500 teaching and 50 research licenses for ANSYS, which is huge when you want to get a lot of people modeling simultaneously. So big boon to us. And our technology focus areas, again, very focused on microwave applications, but we've seen a lot of growth in non-planar applications, conformal, 5-axis printing. We are doing a lot of multi-material printing. You can see this picture. If you can see my cursor, this is a C-band phased array. I'll be talking about a little more about that. We're doing vertical interconnects, obviously antennas, flexible frequency selective surfaces. These are all of interest, and ferromagnetic material is also emerging. So I want to go, I personally was not very involved with this dielectric work, but it's a pretty important feature that we developed through our Rory partnership. So I really wanted to at least touch on it. And this is the development of a BST ink, barium strontium titanate. It's been around for a long time. But the beauty of this material is we can basically help control and tune the dielectric properties over frequency. It has a relatively low loss tangent, 0.01, which is, you know, for a printable material, I would say is very good. And, you know, we've been able to make a mix of these across various dielectrics. So we're looking at these for a variety of applications. Here's one of those applications, which is to make a printed varactor. What you can see in this picture is interdigitated capacitors, a whole suite of printed interdigitated capacitors. And depending on what BST ink we coat on those interdigitated capacitors, we can really essentially tune the surface. So this is a very nice development. And we have the opportunity through some of the plastics engineering departments to extrude polymer films and really go into volume in something like that. Again, I would say it's not as much as what I particularly am working on, but it's emerging applications that we are interested in pursuing for a variety of antennas in particular. Okay, now we're going to get into more of where I've been focused, which is, you know, I would do a lot on what would be essentially the RF front end, transceivers, et cetera, for radar systems and telecommunications. And before we got into any of the additive world, it all starts on really understanding our material sets. As NScript is well aware, printing has been around for a while, printed electronics has been around for a while. I would say it's only relatively recently that the materials have gotten to be of interest at high frequencies, and meaning improvements in dielectrics and conductors. And of course, one of the things was just to develop a very quick, simple way to evaluate a wide suite of materials, both from outside vendors and internal development. And we came up with this simple test coupon. And what you can see here is there are rows of copper lines, just regular printed circuit board copper lines. I think this is on 3000 series Rogers material. We have CPW, microstrip, and grounded CPW. And then we have lines where we just have the pads and the grounds on either side where we can print it. So we can calibrate. We also have TRL structure, so we can do a full calibration up to 40 gigahertz, and then we can print our lines and really get our insertion loss and see where we are. And it's a very nice way for us to quickly screen materials and also to really evaluate some of our curing options. Photonic, for example, photonic cure, thermal cure, laser machining options. We can do all of this very quickly, and we get very good reproducibility whether we test at Raytheon or UMass Lowell. So it's a good screen. Here, for example, is just a couple of inks that we looked at compared to ENIC plated copper. Now, pure copper would be a little lower loss, but this is ENIC plated copper, and we looked at various curing methods. And so again, a nice screen to see where we were when we were starting. We also characterize our dielectrics. We actually make a few of the dielectrics. Our choice is generally to buy our inks. That's always our first choice. We generally make them when we can't buy what we need. So the waveguide method, of course, is a very tried and true method, but can be, you know, it's finicky to make sure your samples fit properly. So we really only take that time after we've screened out something that we think is worthwhile. So again, a quicker way for us to do this is, for example, we print these capacitors where we can basically print a conductor and a center conductor and fill this well with an ink. We actually do it. Sometimes we print this, sometimes we use it in etched copper, so we take out that variable of the printing just to get a little more accuracy. Another way is just to print parallel plate capacitors. We've got a suite of pros and cons on why we would pick one versus another, but again, I'm just to give you the top level, it's just the key here is that we screen everything, because the data we get is generally not as accurate as we want for our model. So we start with this, we down select, and then we go to the waveguide method. And then once we've done that, there's more to it before we really start to print. So for example, if you see this picture here over on the far left, one of the things that's critical to us is, unlike in some applications, we often have die that are get very hot, and they need to be on a very, they can't just be a surface mount part, they have to sit directly on a cooling surface, whether it be a heat spreader or a heat pipe, vapor chamber, what have you. So in order to make sure we have our best microwave properties, we don't want to build ramps up to the die. We actually have essentially a deep valley between the die inputs and outputs and the board that we're connecting to, whatever that board is, whether it be laminate or ceramic. So we needed a way to print that and make sure that we could handle the power and handle the thermal extremes that would create. And so what you're seeing here is the model of the RF signal, but it's also to look at the mechanical, so sort of a multi-physics approach to look at the mechanical stresses on that dielectric to make sure you can survive. And that helped us to choose the right stack of modulus materials for survivability. Once we've done that, we're ready to actually build and test. And here's one of our early examples of, this is just a gas through connected to a 50 ohm line on a piece of ceramic, but it's representative of a thickness that we would use in actual application of 20 thousandths for a particular frequency. That's a lot of dielectric to build up and print, especially when some of them are very rigid and wouldn't survive temp cycles. This material stack has survived temp cycles and multiple SMT reflow, and we've got good correlation compared to ribbon bonds up to about 8 gigahertz in particular. It degrades a little as you get higher, so we're working on doing that. So now we have the basics. So what we wanted to do now is get a good demonstrator to really show what we could do. And so under the America Makes program, we were focused on multi-material printing, and we used a C-band phased array single element as our demonstrator to show what we could do with these basics. And basically, I'm just going to show you one component here, which is this not the combiner, but the tuner, the phase match tuner, because we don't have time to go through all of the elements. So this is one of our simplest structures that we started with, this hybrid phase tuner. And we started with a laminate structure where we literally just had all of this on Rogers material with traditional printed circuit board, and we were just tuning the element by filling in where you see the red. So this is a grounded line here, and we could do a phase adjustment by how much we filled this in. All right, so very, very simple place to start. And so this was our result on our partially printed tuner. We basically were able to show that we were able to adjust phase based on the lengths we printed, but that was just our starting point. We call this the hybrid approach versus the fully printed approach. Now, in this approach, we printed the entire metal one and all the vias. So we did, and the phase adjustment. So everything there was fully printed, and the print time for that part was about 11 minutes.
Time is up. Please wrap up.
It says I may be experiencing network connections issues. Are you hearing me? Is everyone hearing me?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, well, okay, good, because I just got so again, I can't get into all of the various components, but really the takeaway from this slide is by working through the process, we were able to do a significant reduction in print area and have a significant yield improvement by our choices of printers and inks and some of the tricks in design that we learned to help facilitate and compact the design. And we got good results compared to simulation. So now what we did is after we made all of these various parts, combiners, phase tuners, filters, antennas, our first approach, again, what I would call our hybrid approach, was to take the measured data on each of these hybrid parts, right? We measured that and we took the measurements and strung them together in ADS. And we compared that to the simulation end to end, and we got good correlation with that. Now, obviously, we wouldn't want to start there. That was just our starting point. So where we wanted to go was for the fully printed approach. And although you can see we mounted this all on a plate for simplicity, this is a 3000 series material is relatively soft. We could, in fact, potentially bend it in future, but we didn't look at that for this application. So here you can see the condensed bandpass filter and antenna. The combiners we did not integrate because the yield on these was tricky, I'll say, to say the least. What you will see is not printed is the DC bias. All of the RF interconnects are printed. All of the vias are printed. The DC bias was not printed only because the chip we selected had a lot of internal connections that needed crossovers, which we weren't ready to do within the aspect of this. So let's go on to this. Here's an example of, again, the stack up. As I said, this is on a heat spreader.
Wrap up, please.
Oh, five minutes? All right, let me skip this then because I really want to get to, let me get to where let's just say we got good data. I'm going to skip all of that. I want to talk about where we're going and what do we need, okay? I think that would be of interest to this group. So let's go on to, these are some of the areas where we really see non-planar, conformable, flexible, reconfigurable, and tunable. These are the things that really matter to us. And if I could take a minute to show you the video, here's an example of us building a non-planar structure at near chip scale on NScript, as a matter of fact. We're doing that in peak. We're also doing LTEM. And another video I would like to show you very briefly is printing very thin dielectric layers and curing them as we go. So we're continuing to optimize that. That we think is essential. For example, if you print peak, you have to planarize it with dielectric. And let me just sum up with where we are, where our applications, volume shrinks are where it's all about, right? Printing at near chip scale and printing matching networks, a new style of interconnects, die embedment. These are all key features of where we're heading. Another area that we're definitely exploring is EMI shielding. What you see there is just we have these bulkhead connectors and just ways that we can get in and print and shield bulkhead connectors and various other applications on the fly quickly, make adjustments. That's a big area. Obviously, conformal antennas, and then our non-planar functionalized structures. That's a really big emerging area for us, non-planar functionalized structures. So, and I think that you are all aware of some of the issues that are required. I would say that for us to be successful in most of our applications, there isn't one printer that does it all. So what we really need is very good fiducials and calibration as we move from one machine to the next. We are trying to bring it down to at most 2 machines, but we haven't gotten to the point where we're getting it all on one machine. So that's an area that we would very much like to see improve. Yield improvements are something we're always working on, and improved throughput. We do have some ideas for that. Right now, we're definitely at low TRL level and working at, we're making things like under 50 parts a day. So obviously we would want to increase that at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thanks for that great presentation. I'd now like to introduce our next speaker, who is Nick Ciolino. He's Senior Engineering Fellow in, I'm sorry, that's the wrong bio here. Nick holds a BS in Electrical Engineering and MS in Electrical Engineering, both from the University of Arkansas. Since joining Ozark IC, Nick has led the development of Ozark IC's standard cell libraries. In recent projects, he's led development using additive manufacturing techniques to create packages focusing on reliable environmental testing in Venus. I'm talking planet Venus surface conditions. So we're talking about working temperatures of 470 degrees Celsius. So Nick, let's join everyone. Welcome Nick for his presentation.
Thank you, John. Can everyone see? Can everyone hear me?
Roger that.
Can everyone see the slides?
Roger that.
All right. All right, we're still good?
Roger that.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, hello again, and thank you. Yes, my name is Nick Ciolino. I'm an electrical engineer at Ozark Integrated Circuits, and thank you for inviting me to the second annual Strength of 3D Printed Electronics webinar. This is the first time that Ozark IC is in attendance, and we are very excited. I'd like to take a minute to thank Brandon and Inscript and the sponsor Netflix for.
Nick, if I can interrupt you for just a minute,
Yes.
you're in your presentation mode where we're seeing your probably
Okay.
what you're right there. Leave it there.
Yeah. No.
No, you just had it.
You had it.
Nope, now it's back to the notes again.
See, it's. I thought it was doing that. Is that good?
I mean, we still see your notes.
Try one more time. Or just go with that. You're okay right there. Go.
We good still?
Yeah.
Do it.
Okay. Still good?
You're good.
Okay. Again, thank you everyone for organizing this. We're excited to be here. You know, Ozark IC, we try to bring digital enterprises to extreme environments, anywhere very hot, cold, or with extreme vibration. We are proudly based in Arkansas and have secured nearly 10 million today in R&D grants and contracts. At Ozark IC, we believe that we are problem solvers. You know, we take the time to listen to customers and stakeholders and develop, you know, complete solutions. And you'll see that we've applied that mindset to some of the toughest places on and off Earth and utilize 3D manufacturing to compete at the bleeding edge. The application space for rugged electronics is vast, from jet engines monitoring to planetary exploration. Acquiring operational or situational data from these environments is difficult. These rugged electronics are required to survive past traditional electronics with the added difficulty of limited observability and control. So extreme testing, rapid prototyping, and customization is critical for the success of these rugged electronics. So our solution to this is what we call our extreme node or our X nodes. And they are a series of single board computers that can operate in any condition. It's much like an Arduino or Raspberry Pi lower the barrier for Internet of Things. We lower the barriers for deployment of extreme environments.
Nick, I'm going to interrupt you one more time.
Yep.
You're still on your front slide.
Oh, it's not progressing.
No, sir.
I think what's going on is that we're seeing the main PowerPoint. We're not seeing the presentation mode.
Yeah, this interface is difficult to, it's highlighting the slides.
There we go.
It's
That's
not.
perfect. That's
Right there.
perfect.
Okay, now I'm going to try to get my notes. Still good?
Yeah. Still good.
Is it going back and forth?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is who we are. Extreme environment applications, jet engines, all that. And then our Extreme node, our X node application, you can see here. Everyone can see the slide where it shows the X node, and then it shows the Inscript and research and development on the right. Okay.
Yes, we can.
So, and similar to so each node is designed to address the needs of many markets and applications from acquisition to actuation and closed loop control, all with robust communications. And similar to our X nodes, we also have research products that benefit from 3D manufacturing, like you see on the right with our research and development products. To enable operation in any condition, X nodes are built on advanced ceramic platforms. We utilize advanced semiconductors such as silicon on insulator and silicon carbide that can take the heat. We co-design the chips and packages into a design that is compact, small, and right first time. And we use advanced 3D manufacturing techniques that allows us to rapidly integrate new sensors and devices and make structure that simply haven't been possible before. And just here's a short video just illustrating this technology and how 3D manufacturing plays a role in our products in the application space. So is everyone looking at a slide that says acquiring operational or situational data?
Roger that.
Okay, here's the video. All righty, so hopefully everyone was able to watch that and look at some of our cool printing applications and testing, extreme environment testing setups. Moving on, I kind of wanted to take a tour through our 3D manufacturing. So, Ozark IC is definitely very committed to the use of 3D manufacturing. We have both commercial and research projects that take full advantage of 3D manufacturing. This manufacturing at Ozark allows for rapid prototyping, which as a result saves on total turnaround time, which is important for our applications and for a small business. This is also critical for research projects where resources and time are limited. It also allows the use of expensive materials in small quantities relative to traditional additive techniques that waste material. And finally, it allows for unique designs that cannot be achieved with traditional subtractive methods. Now for a virtual tour of our printers. Ozark IC has in-house 3D manufacturing platforms for various applications. Since temperature is a focus for our business, these platforms can be categorized by the operating temperature range of the products they print. On the far left is our FDM printer. Our FDM printer is used to print ESD cases and room temperature plastic prototypes. In the middle is our SLA printer. This printer is used to print high temperature connectors and ultra high temperature ceramic components. On the far right is our proudly owned Inscript 3D and tabletop. The InScript is used to print post-fired thick film pastes onto our ceramic wiring boards. We also utilize the laser system for contour mapping of our substrates. Each printer has a critical role in the development of either a commercial product or a research product. And just a little bit on each printer in more detail. So no doubt the pioneer of 3D printing, our traditional fused deposition printer is utilized for two important functions. When you're working with emerging semiconductor processes, wafers can come in several different sizes as well as the die on them. So ESD plastic is used to print custom die packs for these diced wafers that help us store the die and ship them if needed. Another important use of our FDM printer is for room temperature prototypes. These prototypes are fast and cheap to ensure that the final print is more costly, and the final print in a more costly material will be more close to correct first time. There are also some room temp applications like the vibration setup you see here on the right that benefit from these plastic prototypes. So this is more of a traditional use of 3D manufacturing. And then moving up in temperature, we use our SLA printer to manufacture components that can withstand temperatures in excess of 250 degrees Celsius. So our commercial X node that I was mentioning earlier, the AQ250, utilizes the SLA printer to manufacture custom edge connectors that allow the single board computer to communicate in harsh environments. So these connectors are custom form printed to the shape of the LTCC panel. And then for our 500 degrees C applications, this printer is also capable of manufacturing ceramics. These printed ceramics allow us to electrically isolate conductors on our Venus grade modules, so 500 to 800 degrees Celsius. And last but not least is our InScript printer. Like I said before, we use the InScript to extrude high viscosity post-fired thick film pastes on ceramic substrates. These ultra-high temperature printed wiring boards can be quickly manufactured on the InScript and integrated with our silicon carbide chips. These modules have demonstrated reliable operation at 500 degrees C for over 1,100 hours. An added bonus.
5 minutes.
Thank you. An added bonus of this machine is the laser height scanner, which again, as I mentioned before, we use to map the contour of some of our LTCC modules. And I've got a little video here of the InScript doing its work. And we have, I will just say, since acquiring the InScript, we've been putting it through its paces. We've pushed a lot of pace through it. We find an excuse to use it just about every day. So we love it. All right. So, it is no doubt that 3D manufacturing has provided the necessary edge for our products, and we are absolutely radiating with enthusiasm about it. Again, thank you very much for taking the time and listen, and thank you for inviting us. And hopefully, we'll get to do this again next year.
Thanks, Nick. Great work. Really impressive stuff. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Sudhir Patel. Sudhir is Senior Principal Engineer in the 3D Printed Electronics and Sensors Vertical Lead at Johnson & Johnson. His responsibilities include developing 3D printed electronics and sensors development strategy and technology development roadmaps for Johnson & Johnson, and also leading 3D printed electronics and sensors vertical for technologies scouting and de-risking, while also establishing end-to-end supply chain for respective Johnson & Johnson sectors through internal lab capabilities and external partners. So take it away, Sudhir.
Hey, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Can you see my screen?
We can see your, probably the screen that you see. If you could go into presentation mode. Perfect.
Does it look good?
That looks perfect.
Okay. And is this bar coming in the way? What happened?
No, everything's good.
I don't know what happened. 1 second. Why am I seeing my picture? 1 second.
We see your slide, Sudhir.
Okay, I don't see that, unfortunately. So 1 second, let me see. How can I go back to my deck? Just a minute. Okay, I just stopped sharing my screen. Can you give me access one more time, please? Because I don't know what happened.
Coming up.
He's gone now.
Okay. Can you see my screen now or not yet?
Not yet. 1 second.
No, not yet.
Okay. I did not get notice of sharing the screen.
It says there's a way to do it.
Okay. All right.
Okay, you're
Why
good.
this thing is bringing?
See
Okay,
it
but it
now.
is bringing. Okay. All right. All right. So again, I'm going to talk about this is Sudhir Patel from Johnson & Johnson, and I'm leading a 3D printed electronics and sensor vertical within 3D printing group of corporate Johnson & Johnson corporate. So today I will talk about reimagining healthcare with 3D printed electronics and sensor. But during the same time, I'm going to talk about our strategy and how we are basically taking 3D printing and developing the product and all that. Again, as a corporate, we don't like to share the things with outside world until the product is launched. So what you are going to see is a 50,000, 100,000 feet view of what we are doing. It won't have specific product information or in this particular presentation, but I'm going to share as much as I can. So, all right. So again, investing in the technology with enduring impact, that is what Johnson & Johnson believes in. As the world's largest healthcare company, we are investing in technologies and solutions. And as you can see that in Q1 2020, we are 22 billion, approximately 88 to 90 billion dollar company. Our investment for R&D in 2019 was like 11.4 billion. So it's quite much investment. And here you see, this is my 3D printed electronics and sensor lab in Cincinnati. And this is one of the machine and script machine we have. And we have a few others on the other side. This one is other lab, which is polymer lab in Jacksonville, UNF University. That's it, it's showing a polymer machine, one of that. But what J&J is doing, it basically using our breadth and scale to apply 3D printing technology to disrupt and evolve the way we create and deliver the solution for patient. That is our goal. And how are we going to do it? So changing the trajectory of health for humanity. So we are looking into three big things, like big for good, pioneer ingenuity, health for humanity. How are we going to do that? Leaning in on the key customer expectation, access. Access of the product is very important for our customers. There are places in the world that it is very difficult to get something out fast when it is needed. So how can we provide the access? Personalization, instead of having it made for mass, how can I get it done for that particular patient or customer? On-demand transparency, so complete transparency with customers, patients, and how can we use the digital technologies to make things happen. So that is what we are focusing on, and that's the way we develop our strategy to develop what product line we should work on and how can we deliver the results that will improve the healthcare, improve the patient's life at the end of the application. So it's a confluence of health and technology. So healthcare at the intersection of technology. So if you see, look at the current state of healthcare, aging population, then reduce reimbursement, focus on outcome, lack of personalization, as I said, that made for mass, high total cost of care. So all those things basically are forcing us to shift our paradigm and think differently. So with the help of this emerging technology, what can we do? So what are the things we can do with the emerging technology? So 3D printing is one of the big one. Big data and analytics. Can we use that in order to improve that? Surgical robotics, bioprinting, genome-based personalized medicines, drone delivery. So as the health needs and expectations evolve, we must anticipate what is next and innovate new solutions. That is what our goal is. And that's what we focus on in order to develop our roadmaps for technology and deliver the technology. So just give you an example that imaging solving every customer's unique need. Here you can see this lady is taking picture of her face using smartphone and then send that basically picture or model. System basically creates the model to the 3D printer. That 3D printer could be in our house. It could be in some pharmacy. It could be somewhere at J&J. They print the product and now they apply the face mask on their face. That face mask can have sensors to detect the skin health, can have a therapeutic application to treat the skin for basically healthy skin. So it is made for meat treatment. That is what we are focusing on. How can we deliver those kind of applications and get it done and utilize this emerging technology, 3D printing and printing in order to deliver those results. That is what our focus is. Then possibility is reimaging. So combine the innovation and cutting edge technologies to deliver ultra personalized patient specific healthcare solutions. So what is possible with 3D printing right now? You can see unique design structures. So in this particular one, you are seeing spine cages, 3D printed spine cages, personalized beauty care, patient specific implant. This is basically if somebody have a cancer and they basically cut their bone, how can the bone grow? So these are like basically bone cages. Surgical tools. But again, this is now. If we think about long term, what is feasible in the future? So 3D bioprinting and tissue regeneration, personalized medications, new business model innovation. But on the top of that, what will help all this thing to make it happen is printed sensors and electronics. That is the big one, a player that is going to change how the healthcare is now versus how the healthcare is going to be from 5 to 10 years from now. Like think about this, like for pharma, consumer medical technology applications, where we are now versus where we can able to go in next 8 year or 8 to 10 years. So highly differentiated product, personalized oral care devices, basically to check the status of our gums, that how healthy our gums are, how can we treat our gums, how can we make it better. Personalized skincare and beauty products, as I showed earlier. Then basically inclusion of electronics and sensors in contact lens as it is shown here. Then inclusion of sensors and biofeedback, health monitoring, and predictive technologies that can help do things better for surgeon as well as the physician and the consumer and patient. Wearable drug delivery for self-care products, inclusion of sensors and biofeedback and improved outcomes for improved outcomes kind of thing. So that is for the pharma, consumer, and consumer medtech. The other big business within Johnson and Johnson is like a medical device. So for medical device, what is possible? As a highly differentiated product, as well as for the long-term disruptions. Inclusion of sensors for biofeedback, electronics for sensing and feedback. Then here it is showing one particular product line just as an example, but not restricted to this. It can be applicable to multiple places. Microprinted surgical catheters and medical devices with sensors for ongoing support to surgeon, as well as the customer. That customer can also know the health condition of themselves post-surgical basically intervention. So then detect the healing and the complication to optimize the care in advance. So that way they can find out faster rather than if it is too late, and treat this to those scenarios and can have a healthy life. Electronics for sensing and feedback to minimize the surgical site infection. If you look at the numbers, surgical site infection is one of the biggest challenge surgeons face. During the COVID-19, all those surgeries were stopped because of the bigger fear that surgical site infection will happen. So that is the thing. Those are the things. How can we detect? How can we treat those things faster? and improve the life of a patient. At the same time, help healthcare provider to understand that what is going on. So instead if it becoming too late, they can treat it faster and have greater life for patient. So that is what it is. So this is all our strategy. As I said, I am not going to go in too much detail, but that's what we have, and this is what help us in order to determine what product to work on, how we can develop the technologies. And I think Suzanne, as Suzanne was showing that they are using TRL, we use the similar things to de-risk our technology and go from one step to other and ensure that it is ready for R&D to use it for next product kind of thing. So that is our approach. But can we do it ourselves? No, we can't. So collaborating with top minds from around the world is most important. So we have partners. So
You have
Enscript,
5
for
minutes.
example, it's
5 minutes.
no problem. I'll return by that. So Enscript, for example, they are our strategic partner. So we have a technology provider, we have manufacturer, and we have universities part of our strategic partners. So it's basically that helps us getting it done sooner and expand our capability, and we can do multiple things at the same time. We have technology partner, as I said, and Script is one of them. We have material and process development partners. So like we don't develop the materials ourselves, all the materials. We do some of them ourselves, but then go outside to the different expertise and help them work with them to figure it out how we can develop those things. We have supply chain partners. We also partner with academic and government in order to do certain development work. And we also partner with hospital and the medical centers in how can we improve the patient's care? What is that we can do in order to make things better? So as I said, that access is one of our biggest priorities. So how can we work with hospital? So the product can be designed here somewhere in United States, but it can be printed, can be 3D printed with the electronics and sensors on it somewhere in the remote part of the world and can be used, which is not feasible at this time. So those are the things we are focusing on and trying to see how we can address different aspects of the need in order to get to the next level for the patient care. What are the materials we are working on? All of our materials basically requires biocompatibility. We have multiple dielectrics that we are focusing on. We have multiple conductive inks that we are developing and we are focusing on for different applications. It's based on the applications and all that. So that is what we are working on and we are doing it at this time. So that is what I have it right now. That's all I can able to share. So, okay.
Thank you, Sudhir, and thank you for sharing as much as you possibly could. We understand that every company has rules about what can be shared, so we're really happy you were able to participate and share as much as you did. I'd now like to introduce our next speaker, who is Dr. Anand Kulkarni, who's the principal key expert in the materials design and manufacturing group for Siemens Corporation. He has over 25 years of R&D experience in materials, coatings, and sensors for power systems, 10 years in material needs for environmental operational flexibility, and 7 years in data-driven intelligent manufacturing. So take it away, Anand.
Thank you very much. Do you guys see my screen?
Roger that.
Yes, we do.
All right. So good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to present. As we saw from previous speakers, they all had access to Enscript much before we did. We just recently, end of March, got our printer. So there's a long way to go, but I see a lot of potential. But what we lack in hardware, I think we make it more than that in software side. I know Siemens has been working very closely with Netflix on optimized flow from design to manufacturing to verification of printed electronics. So what I'm going to show is end-to-end solutions that we provide, a short roadmap of where we think there is a potential and how we are extending this AMs to solutions to 3D printed electronics. As you know, we are a large company. I'm not doing it alone. We have a bunch of folks on the technology side in Germany, and they're involved with a few consortium projects in Europe to again scout the market for 3D printed electronics. And then a lot of names will look familiar to you guys from mentor side. So they all are supporting us in this journey towards 3D printed electronics. Is this thing in the middle, or you guys are okay? The
slides are changing. We can see it. Okay.
Okay. So as Siemens, we're a leading company, mainly providing industry-specific support to our customers. That's what we do today for additive, for all the things related to conventional additive manufacturing. But we'll kind of extend the same portfolio to printed electronics as well. And like I said, the mentor folks have been working with you guys on that front. We're 295,000 employees with 58 billion in revenue, and again growing strong in the digital arena moving forward. Where we have found innovation with respect to additive, again, reimagining product. Siemens supports a lot of markets. You have power systems, which is gas turbines, steam turbines. Generator side, you have healthcare with CRT, MRIs, and also on the automotive side, and now also on the printed electronic side. So the main benefits we are seeing from additive manufacturing are actually reimagining products. So how do we reduce weight or reduce the amount of material? Anything that I can scan, can I make a 3D model and print it, expand the performance of them, or accelerate the innovation cycles in that regard? We're also able to rethink business. We don't need to hold inventory. We have on-demand printing, and like Sudhir said, what he can do on the having the CAD model and printing in remote areas. We think of it as oil rigs. So where if you have a printer, you can from a command center, you can send a model and print it over there for what is needed. So applications are pretty similar to all industries. But the potential of software being able to solve that is where we see the biggest potential, and we're partnering with a lot of OEMs in that regard on integrating that. And the same thing is what we have as a strategic agreement with Enscript. And then the last thing is reinventing manufacturing. Currently, we have a certain way of making parts. Either we make molds and toolings and then cast them. Can we eliminate all of that and 3D print, and that way reduce supply chains or have affordable low volume parts? So again, it's still in the prototyping mode, but slowly moving towards production side. And one of the biggest things we have to see is how does it fit with conventional manufacturing. So that's where most of the focus is. The main issue we also see with additive manufacturing is the disconnected software. So right now, if you look at software, you have to design in a certain package, and then you have to simulate it, and then you have to take to the build preparation stage where it is on a printer OEM's configuration, and then you again have to AM process, bring it to heat treatment, finishing, and then have an end-to-end part. So again, a lot of conventional thinking involved. It's a disconnected process chain. There's a multiple file conversion that you have to do, and it's an uncontrolled workflow. So that's where Siemens has been driving its innovation in how do we have one package which actually the designer can see the whole thing. So all the way from designing to simulation to actually doing the post-processing and inspection as well. And that's what we do on our current platform. Again, this is for conventional, but the last slide you'll see we have taken it to the electronic side as well. So again, all the way from order management, design to additive, bringing in advanced things like generative design, design validation of it, build preparation, build simulation, post-processing, all of this analytics is done. And it's not the end. I mean, if you look at it, we now have to go into futuristic things, which is multidisciplinary generative engineering, multi-physics simulation. As Susan said, we are also doing the electronic and mechanical and thermal simulations, which will be needed for the electronics as well. First time done right. This is a new thing that we are bringing, where it's again simulation driven, spending a lot of time. Right now, additive is still trial and error. Once you print, you know where the issues are, you reconnect it or correct it. And reprint it. So this is where we found out that the simulation aspect of it is greatly helping. So this just gives you a flow of where we are with the conventional additive. We have a lot of printers and printer OEMs we are working with that help our day-to-day problems. But going forward, we just wanted to share where the market size for printed electronics is. So again, this is something that my colleagues in Germany are doing, and we are seeing that sensors and conductive inks are the main market values for printed electronics. And you can see the market is just growing from 2018 to 29. You're actually more than 9 billion. And again, all the applications industries are mentioned here. You have electrochromic or sensing, you have conductors, batteries, photovoltaic. So potential is there for this technology to be implemented in multiple of these applications. Where and which one is driving? If you look at this, screen printing is the only technology which has kind of taken it to commercial products. It's the most dominant market, I would say. But all the other ones are also, you can see they're slowly making transitions. So going from printing functional inks, so there's the slot die coating technique which is used in electrophoretic. It has now gone into batteries and supercapacitor side, and then all the other ones where inkjet is where Enscript is. We are seeing a slow transition from R&D to going into more commercial products, and we ourselves are doing the same homework as well. Which of our controller boards or which of our circuits can be made with this? So identification of the potentials, and then working with, again, we have a close relationship with Enscript where we are working with them on how do we make these possible. So again, technologies are there, they just have to make that transition, and you guys are already aware of which ones they're helping with. Why? What's the motivation behind it? So if you look at where the electronics is right now, all the old circuits that are there, the OEMs are not existing anymore, or they have moved on to advanced products. So kind of replacing the whole existing device is one effort, and although it requires high investment, if you look at military, with the circuitry they want to have these products. So there is a potential there. The second benefit is improvement. So how do I take this printed electronics to offer value or change, add or functionality to an existing product? And then the third is quite new. How do I bring new products or complete solutions? So again, we are looking at collecting data that is not previously done when it was actually made, but it also allows a lot of potential in that regard. So this is a slide from my German colleagues where they are looking at technology scouting with a bunch of partners. It's part of their KEX studies that they are doing, where they have a few institutions on nano dimensions where they're evaluating inkjet printing. With Optomic, it's the aerosol jet. With Neotech, they're looking at nanojet. With TNO, it's SLA and dispensing. With Fraunhofer, they're looking at 3D dispensing. And again, with Hamburg, they're looking at FDM and dispensing. So I'm not going to go into details. You guys are aware of all of this, but the main benefit is the technologies are there. It's the materials portion that's where the development is needed, and that's where we would be focusing on going forward. So this is our relationship with Enscript. We are, as Siemens, we have a large portfolio that have products which go all the way from design to development of electronic systems and circuits. So we are identifying the circuits that can be developed with this technology, and we're working with them on digitally integrating their product into our NX platform or AM platform. And that way you can start imagining new things. Is there a new tool path possible to do multi-material deposition or functional graded material deposition? So this is a part of effort we have just started. Like I said, we have our printer which just came a month and a half back. We have been trained on it, and now we're closely working with Enscript to make the digital journey as well as the hardware journey possible.
You have 5 minutes, Anand?
All right, I have a few more slides. On the digital side, again, I don't have to preach. You guys are aware of everything that we do here. But if you look at the 5 areas, the digital integrating or the improving the engineering productivity, there is a lot of things that are already available. The whole tool chain, it requires electronic to mechanical design, and we have decades of experience in PCB manufacturing. So that's where all that experience comes into picture. With engineering productivity, there are a lot of challenges, right? There's bare or buried ICs, passives, localized dielectrics that are needed. So again, we have to look at all of that, and that's where the digital twin or simulation-based efforts bring a lot of potential. And then the last thing is, how do we this printed electronics, the printed IoT, it needs to talk to the larger system. So again, how do we enable that communication is what the focus would be. And on the last topic, the supplier strength, again, I showed you all the digital tools. So all the generative design, machine learning, AM, it's part of a large portfolio. And as we get more and more data, all of that will be enabled with these software solutions. So where do we as Siemens see potential? There is a lot of potential for printed electronics in condition monitoring. So again, putting sensors, and Susan showed that, and even on the healthcare side, Sudhir showed that. So lifetime analysis or predictive maintenance is a big aspect. Instrumentation, how do we integrate these prototypes into design and then quickly validate that, so that way we can have products out to the market faster. Identification and localization. So this is again spare part management, handling or logistics, or even serial number identification. The sensors would play a major role there. And then again, on the digital side, we are kind of deriving next generation products with a shorter innovation cycles, and these sensors will drive that. So again, first time right strategy is where we think we can push with the printed electronics platform. So for us, we are integrating all of that as an additive manufacturing network. So this is a capability that is available where all of these tools set, and you can see all the technologies supported from all the way from SLM to multi-jet fusion to E-beam, and you can see electronics 3D printing is also part of it. So again, here is where people can upload their models or drawings and see the potential cost compared to how we conventionally do, and also what kind of opportunities are available on which printer. So this is again something that we show as a service, and again available to everybody if they want to try out or dwell into additive manufacturing, and they don't know which product is the right product for them. So this is something that we have just started, and again it's growing with a growing number of printers that are coming into the market.
You have 2 minutes, Anand?
Yeah, so to summarize, we from what is seen, maturity of technologies that are there are too low in terms of TRLs. We are in the TRL 3, 4, maybe 5 stage. But again, the path is there, and one such technology like screen printing has made it out of that. The material requirements, currently everybody is developing it. So if you look at what the current electronic level material properties are needed, it's still in the development stage. And then the focus of this is still on prototyping and instrumentation. So that's what we feel. But again, it's changing by every new material or every new dielectric or every new conductoring being developed. So from a development task, we feel like developing materials and printers to meet the state of the art electronic requirements is the first key. Multi-material deposition, and that's where integrating the software aspect also is of interest. We need to look at new solder or assembly strategies with this 3D printing. Again, having integrated our printing strategies. So this is where the digital twin plays a key role. Printing interconnects and plug solutions for signal read and readout is again a key need that is needed. Interoperability, and then again integration and automatic strategies with conventional manufacturing. There's a lot of investment already done there. So if we show it as a replacement, it is always going to have a barrier. And from a challenge point of view, for materials person, for us, we have to focus on layer thickness, feature size, what the throughput and yield of this manufacturing process is, how the material performance of that is, physical durability of it, reliability, and then again, how do we do conventional automated bonding or solder process versus is there a need for developing a new one? So again, just to summarize, we are on the right path. There's a lot of potential. It just has to go hand in hand with the digital or the simulation side. So we are actually having less efforts on the actual materials development, and that way we can actually move to product delivery faster. So thank you.
Well, Anand, thank you for sharing Siemens' directions and strategy in 3D manufacturing of printed electronics. I'd like now to introduce our last speaker, Dr. Zachary Larimore, who is the President and Chief Technology Officer of Deluxe Engineering. Zach received his PhD in electrical engineering from the University of Delaware in 2019 and his BS in mechanical engineering from Missouri University of Science and Technology in 2011. Prior to obtaining his doctorate, he worked at the U.S. Army Research Laboratory, where he co-founded and managed the Micro Compositronics and Rapid Operations Laboratory, which is ARL Microlab. Dr. Larimore's areas of expertise are multi-material additive manufacturing, materials development for additive manufacturing, and printed RF structures. So please take it away, Zach.
Thanks, John. I appreciate the introduction. Thanks to Inscript and also Nextflex for hosting this and then giving me the chance to speak a little bit about what we are and what we do. Okay. So Deluxe is a small business. We founded in 2015. We spun out of the lab group that I was doing my PhD work in at the University of Delaware. And we have an expertise in additive manufacturing, computational electromagnetics, and material development. Our general overview and general stance on additive manufacturing of RF structures and devices is that at this point you need to sort of control everything from the beginning to the end of the process. That includes design and modeling, material development, fabrication, and evaluation. And then you can generate a feedback loop that allows you to continually progress and improve. And so basically what I'm going to go through here is a few just examples of materials and processes and devices that we make that go into a larger suite of things that we do and we make. We do a lot of R&D, SBIR efforts, and then we do some consulting for larger corporations, and then we're starting to do some small scale production of some devices I'll talk about in a minute. So the first thing I want to talk about is printed antenna arrays with integrated RF connectors. So printed antennas have been around for a long time. People have been doing printed antennas. You've seen them for a long time. I've heard Ken say a few times the antenna is the easy part, and frankly, I kind of have to agree. The radiating element is the easy part. The harder part is everything that goes before it. All of the amplification, the connectors, how you feed it, how you do all of those things. And additive allows you to have a unique approach to that. So the first thing I want to talk about is our printed RF connectors. Like I said, it addresses a historically common issue that people have is they print an antenna, they print a RF system. How do you get signals in and out? A lot of times that means you take a commercial off-the-shelf connector, you conductive epoxy it on there, and you introduce a bunch of loss to your system and degrade your performance. So we decided to tackle that problem by developing fully printed connectors that you can integrate directly into your build, eliminate your need for soldering, post-processing, etc. And you can see it's not a trivial problem. You're making a complex part with small features, and then you're also tuning it for RF performance. So there's a lot of design and simulation that goes on into there. And then producing your actual build file presents its own set of challenges. But what we have is we've come up with a printed SMA style connector. It interfaces directly with COTS components, and we see reasonable performance. The first question that always gets asked, and that's why the bottom plot is here, is, okay, you printed a connector out of polymer, how robust is it? So we've done a bunch of cycling, we've done a bunch of stress testing, and what we found is that they're pretty durable. Hundreds of cycles, connection, reconnection, and we see a maintained performance. And right now we have connectors that we can reliably use and print that function up to 18 gigahertz. One of the challenges that we came across in developing these connectors is we're creating these long, high aspect ratio channels. As has been mentioned, previous to this, a big challenge is printed conductors. And so upon our initial design and build of these, our performance wasn't matching simulation. Right now, our favorite ink, we characterize every new ink that comes onto market as soon as we can get our hands on it. And right now, our favorite commercially off the shelf ink is from DuPont. It's K802. To our knowledge, it's the first ink that was designed for micro dispensing. DuPont came to us, asked us what we liked and don't liked about their inks, and we went through an iterative process with them, and they generated K802. It's an excellent ink if you're printing onto surfaces, doing complex features, small features, high conductivity, and it's a fantastic ink for basically every application we've come across except for this one, which is to fill these long high aspect ratio channels. There is some off-gassing that occurs, and you can see this is a CT scan of one of our printed through-line connectors, and you see a large void content. We came up with two solutions. One was to vastly slow down our printing process and do very incremental small layers with a full cure of every small layer, allowing it to drive off the gases as we go up in height. That takes way too long. So our next step was to try to develop our own ink based off of what we know about the challenges and the problems. And so we developed a silver conducting ink specifically for high aspect ratio channel fills. And you can see here, same geometry of the connector, same build process, etc. And here's a CT scan of our printed conductors. You can see very low void content, excellent conductivity. And so we're able to drive that performance back up to where we deem acceptable. And so we're able to get printed connectors with attenuation constants as low as 0.3 dB per centimeter, which we find to be pretty acceptable for most application spaces. And so now why are we doing that? Here's a specific application that we have. It's a fully printed antenna array. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this antenna array as I go into the next section, but it's dual band nested patches. So we're operating over 2 frequency bands, and you'll notice that these interior patches, so these are all dual polarization as well. And so if you would like to feed these center patches, you don't have the physical space to put 2 connectors to have a straight line feed from the backplane to the radiating patch. So in order to do that, we have to do some 3-dimensional routing. And so that's what's going on here is these printed connectors allow us to do 3-dimensional routing of our signal line and feed something that you would not have been able to feed with a commercial off-the-shelf connector. You would have had to have come up with some custom solution anyways. And we're able to print it directly into the entire device as a whole. And you can see we have port-to-port consistency of our radiating performance here. So this is just a unique application where I know that traditional manufacturing means this antenna system was brought to traditional producers, and they were the customer was turned away because they had no way of building those feeds in a cost-effective manner. So the next thing I want to talk about is development of tailorable dielectric feedstock for additive manufacturing. So again, it was mentioned earlier, but tailored dielectrics allow you to do some really unique and interesting RF devices and structures. In this slide here, I'm showing just generally our process for producing tailored dielectric filaments. We disperse dielectric particles within our base polymer. We pelletize those, run an extrusion, and create spools of filament. And so for something like this dual nested patch antenna, we're actually, to get the performance that we need, we're actually using 3 different dielectric constants all in one single substrate. So you can see this outer area, that is all a dielectric constant of 6.2. The inner area is a dielectric constant of 2.68, and then there's a top portion here, and that is a dielectric constant of 2. So to get all of those dielectric constants into one 3-dimensional substrate with printed conductors on the surfaces and embedded within, to do that without additive, you're going to have a ton of piece parts and a difficult time making that antenna, or just making that antenna substrate in general. We're able to get very low loss tangents with tailored dielectric filaments. So up to, right here I'm showing a dielectric filament that has up to 5.98 loss tangent of 0.015.
You have 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Gotcha. Thanks. We're able to exceed that now. We can do spoolable printable filaments with high levels of consistency, up to a dielectric constant of about 7.5 at this point. Another application space for this is in graded index structures. This is sort of what Deluxe is most known for, and if you've seen any of our work before, you've probably seen us talk about lenses. So I'm not going to talk very in depth about that, but in general here, we're able to make some very unique graded index lenses, and now we're able to make some that are even more unique by producing these larger quantities of tailored dielectric filaments. Here is a lens that we made off of a flat back feed plane. We're able to get plus minus 55 degrees of steering and beam forming. We're working to drive that out as far as 70 degrees, which we're only able to do by tailoring the dielectric constant of our feedstock when we're printing. This has a wide range of applications. So one of the products that we have that is in small scale production at this point is radar detection systems. So we have passive systems that you can set out, and it will use the passive lens to allow you to know directionality and intensity with which someone is looking at you with an RF signal over a broad band of frequencies. And then the final application space that I wanted to talk about is custom horde antennas and orthomode transducers. So this is a unique project that we had come across us in the recent months. And what we were tasked with is we needed a dual polarization horn with a custom radiation pattern operating within the X-band with 30 dB of cross-pole isolation. Our solution included a printed orthomode transducer. So this back portion here with the 2 waveguide to coax transitions is our orthomode transducer. This big chunk of metal here is a commercially available X-band orthomode transducer. You can see how compact we're able to go via 3D printing. Our solution versus COTS solution was a 5x weight savings. This is for an aerospace application, so 5x in weight is significant. And then 3x cost savings, and we're able to fabricate an entire horn orthomode transducer and assembly of it in under 7 hours. So we were able to, with additive manufacturing, produce the beam pattern that they desired, the cross-pole isolation that they desired, and the return loss values that they wanted in a package that was 3 times cheaper, 5 times lighter, and the entire development cycle from them coming to us with the problem to them having the devices in their hand was 2 weeks. That's something you just wouldn't be able to do with commercial manufacturing processes. These build all on a single build plate. The InScript allows us to polish surfaces and metallize them so that we have very low levels of surface roughness, and we're able to make devices that are really unique within the RF space that you just wouldn't be able to produce in the same time or at the same performance values through traditional means. And I think that's it.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Zach. Great. Again, as I said before, great work. Now I'd like to open it up to questions, and taking the questions is going to be led by Ken and Scott Miller.
Thanks so much, John. Hey, speakers, you guys are all amazing folks. I am certainly impressed by everything that has gone on and also the vision that you guys maintain. I am excited about sort of the future of what's happening here. There is a, Susan, if you're still with me, can you make that show up here? Where are we going here? Susan, if you're still with me.
I'm still here.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. So one of our listeners asked, does delamination of printed ink from the substrate happen when you're doing the work that you've been doing?
So we actually will test for that. For example, when we're printing the peak, as I showed the printing the peak on the InScript, we then have a rough surface and we actually put a planarizing dielectric on that. One of that tests is for compatibility between our conductors and the peak for adhesion. So we use a standard ASTM test and always verify that we get, you know, basically a 5 grade. So that means best grade for adhesion. If you don't do that, we have had formulas where that's been an issue. Frankly, I think the biggest problem we have is cracking, you know, especially when you're going over multiple materials, right? We're stacking up a variety of different dielectric materials to create our structures. And, you know, getting adhesion hasn't been our biggest problem. It's been making sure that they don't start shrinking and cracking and survive. We have to survive surface mount reflow temperatures, right? So we want those excursions as well.
Okay, great. And
we are not, I will say, if I could just add one other thing that I would say we still have a long way to go to get to our meeting our full mission profile in terms of extreme cold to extreme hot. Right now, we're just focused on surface mount reflow and more like transport conditions.
Okay, and then another thought is the performance of the RF devices that you're working with versus traditionally manufactured devices, and what are the timeframes when they'll start matching, or do you think that is going to happen? And if so, will 3D printed electronics even go beyond that?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so right away, I have to be very careful when I work with designers and I show them our printed electronics data, because, you know, they want ultra low loss. We're not at ultra low loss yet, right? We just are not. We're doing things to compensate, but we're doing things that they can't do with traditional means. I do see our near-term applications to be things where our mission life is a little shorter, maybe a little more disposable, and maybe not our highest requirements. That's frankly where I see us right now. We're gonna get there, but we're not there yet.
Okay, beautiful. Scott.
Yeah,
You're up.
Thanks, Ken. So several of the speakers, and by the way, I'd like to tell all of you that I thought the talks were really interesting, covered a lot of great ground and made some excellent points. Several of you referred to the need for really doing high-level material characterization so that you can understand the performance that you're going to get when you go and build systems. I'm curious whether any of you have anything you can add about high throughput material screening or ways that you can get at the kind of intricate properties that we need to get, especially with RF systems, for example, is, do you have a way to go and characterize those conductors and dielectrics in a high throughput way so that you can get lots of data? Or is it really just the slogging through every individual measurement the long standard old way?
Scott, directed at someone.
Why don't I start with Zach? Zach said he screens every commercial ink that comes on the market.
He deserves it too.
Then I'd ask Sue as well.
Yeah.
She's got a great RF test coupon. I can imagine how long it takes to characterize each.
Yeah, so for us, we consider it to be relatively high throughput. So we have a standard set of tests that we do for conductive inks, and we have a standard set of tests that we have for dielectrics. For dielectrics, what we do is we want to make a flat, smooth plate, roughly 6 inches by 6 inches by a few millimeters thick. And we use a focus beam system, and we measure from 8 gigahertz to 110 gigahertz, and then we back out dielectric properties from there. For us, that process for a dielectric material takes 10 to 15 minutes for each new material. So it's relatively quick. It could be set up and done in a relatively quick manner with little interaction from an operator. As far as conductive inks go, that's a little bit more time consuming. And for us, that entails doing similar to what was laid out, where we have a test coupon. We determine surface adhesion, we determine power handling, temperature handling, and then we back out conductivities as well. That's a little more time consuming. And frankly, at this point, no, we don't have a high throughput way of doing that. It takes us a couple of days to characterize an ink. Part of that is learning how to print that ink, though. And that is something that is probably the more difficult part of speeding up that process is how do you take a brand new ink that you've never used before? It's got shear thinning or shear thickening properties. It's got all these different print parameters, and how do you know that you're laying it down in the best way possible? And so that's an iterative process for us at this point.
Thanks very much.
Yep.
And then Scott, did you want to direct that at Susan also?
Yeah, I guess if Sue has anything else to add there, she showed, Sue, you showed that really nice RF test coupon, but are you going in and putting down RF probes on every one of those structures individually and manually to measure them?
So, I mean, we do have a set of sort of a variety of tests, right? So we have some standard print tests we run. For the RF probing, we don't necessarily do that on every batch of material. We do it in detail whenever we bring in a new material. We have simpler tests that we run per batch. I will say we have seen some of our favorite materials haven't been as consistent batch to batch as we'd like. I do expect that the screening, I hope, will become better as some of these materials get made in larger volume with a little more consistency. So it is a problem. It is a problem that means we're making adjustments on the machine. And we have developed very relatively elaborate process flows to work through when we get a new material and you run a print test and you look at those results and you make choices based on those results. So you basically have a workflow diagram of how to modify based on what came in. So there's a lot of just grinding through it work to develop that kind of process flow for each ink.
Okay,
Anand, it's a barrier. The barrier we haven't surpassed yet.
Thank you so much, Susan. Anand at Siemens, you have a listener who asked this. For Siemens, are there plans for developing software that is equivalent to Expedition, but intended for a three-dimensional environment so that electronic design can adapt to new printing environment of 3D dimensions with additive manufacturing?
Yes, we are looking at conformal electronics, and in that, integrating robotic, mounting of devices to do that. I think the NScript also allows that. But once we integrate maybe the digital twin, it might be more clearer how far that goal is. But yeah, I mean, there is software available for 3D printing like DED, direct energy deposition, which is for robot mounted, or the CAD CAM is integrated in there. So there is potential. We just have to see once we integrate how far that would be for 3D printed electronics.
Okay, and then also you start talking about functional printing that enables a collection of a lot of data. And when I think about what Sudhir talked about with sort of almost a personalized medicine approach, we're talking about a lot of sensors and a lot of data that could not be captured until maybe even we're able to do what we're doing, that is printing a lot of these sensors, putting them out there. But with so much data, Anand, how do you, I guess, are you guys proposing to handle it, store it, sort it, and use it? If there's going to be so much data, how are you going to deal with all that?
So we do that today. For example, if you look at power systems like gas turbines, we don't do this much instrumentation for every part out there, but whenever a new design is developed, it is heavily instrumented. We spend 3 to 6 months putting all those sensors, thousands of sensors, for design validation. So again, we're not suggesting you're going to need that for every application out there, but if any new product is being sent out, the designer would definitely like to know how that's going to perform, because that's what is validating the design, so they can look at how far they can move forward. So there is we currently do it. We also store and analyze it. We have power diagnostic centers like that in places, and again, the one we have in Orlando, you can actually track every turbine all over the world. So there is infrastructure that exists, and nowadays cloud-based solutions are pretty available. So that actually might be beneficial as well for such analysis.
Excellent. Sudhir, since I'm brought your name in, I want to go ahead and finish that. You had a concept of 5 to 10 years from now that we would start seeing more personalized data coming in, more devices that can maybe the everyday user could use, and with that data enhance their medical opportunities. What is the timing on this? So you said 5 to 10 years. Is the timing that you're looking at, is that because of size that we're struggling with? Is it performance? Is it the ideas? The ideas have not panned out? Or is it throughput? We have the ideas, but we just can't make the devices fast enough. What is the limitation right now? Why can't I do this tomorrow?
So a great question, and thank you for the question. The biggest challenge right now, as we discussed earlier, that the material development is the big one. Then once we develop the material, right material and all that, then making sure that our processes are repeatable, reliable, and then we go through the regulatory, because we can't just make a 1 sample or 2 samples, test it, looks good, sell it. No. So regulatory environment is also one critical environment. We need to make sure what we do depends on what kind of product it is. If it is an implantable, it's even longer time. If it is non-implantable, how long? Does it come in a body fluid contact, or it is just external? What is that? Based on that it is. But again, when we talk about external, for example, consumer product, then consumer product is supposed to be extremely cheap. So can these sensors be made cheaply? So that's basically cost pressure is there, and technology is not there in order to meet those needs. So we have to do other way around. But biggest challenge I see right now is the technology development, especially the material is the biggest one. How can we develop right material that can basically have consistency, give us a consistent data, reliable and biocompatible? That is the biggest thing I see. Once that is done, then repeatable process is the next step. But again, we do it as a parallel activity to get things through faster. So
wonderful. Scott?
Yeah, so for Nick, a question. You're building systems that that go into harsh environments and have very high reliability requirements. You're putting something on the surface of Venus. It's not like you go and repair it or replace it. Same thing in space. Could you comment on what some of your biggest challenges related to reliability are in these 3D printed electronic systems?
Packaging. packaging has been, since we work with the semiconductor technologies, packaging has been probably the hardest barrier to overcome to qualify the performance of these devices. So we're talking, you know, tens of days, and you know, the surface of Venus is 100 bar pressure, 470 degrees Celsius, caustic atmosphere. And so, you know, to qualify these semiconductor components, you have to put them in that environment, you know, on Earth and test them, right? So, I mean, there's specialized environments like this at the Glenn Research Center and NASA, like the Gear Chamber. But we do a lot of, we have our own furnace, we have several test environments that are Venus analogs. I mean, it's Earth atmosphere, but getting to enough of a confidence to say this module will work at 500 degrees Celsius for this many hours, you have to integrate the die onto high reliable materials. And in the electronics industry, those aren't commercially available. Most of them are, you know, Rogers material, which doesn't work at 500 degrees Celsius, LTCC, which doesn't work at 500 degrees Celsius. So you have to use very basic, high reliable, pure elements, and those are expensive. Like, those are very expensive, platinum, gold, those kinds of materials. And being able to extrude them with something like an Inscript and save the material in a syringe, as opposed to screen printing where you're wasting virgin material from, you know, the screening process, has allowed us to address the rugged testing capability in a lean, sort of a lean, because we're a small company, so, you know, every penny counts, and time counts. And, you know, some of these programs that we're in are 6 months, right? So you got to be able to turn it around quick. I know some of the folks I've worked with at Cyperio understand the pressure I put them under to get some prints done before we had our own Inscript. So it's, you know, it's a difficult barrier to cross, but once we figured out that manufacturing process using additive, we were able to get some pretty promising results with our silicon carbide technology. And now it's been, you know, it's been breaking loose all kinds of possibilities. So, you know, additive is to thank for that, for sure.
I want to move over back to Zach for a minute. Zach, you said wouldn't be able to do it with traditional manufacturing. This is interesting. For those of us who have been at this for a while, it almost felt like that we were just trying anything for the sake of trying 3D printing. And so if I can, can I make that with a 3D printer? We'd go do that. I'm sure you've maybe felt that a little bit, you know, in the past, but how does that feel today? I mean, does it feel like you're doing things because, I can try with 3D printer, or does it feel like, I have to use one of these?
Yeah, so we're very big on, if there's a better solution that's not additive, use that, right? If there's a traditional manufacturing method that works really well and is cheap and fast and ideal for the situation, we're going to tell you to go use that. And so when it comes to something like that, where a company comes to us and says, we've got 2 weeks, we need an antenna that does this. If you go to a commercial RF component manufacturer, they're going to say it's not worth our time, which is what happened, right? Whereas we can look at them and go, no, we can do that, and it's worth our time. For us, that is happening more and more often, right? Where they're coming to us and they say, hey, we've got this idea. We've gone to the traditional producers of these devices, the large RF component manufacturers, the large prime DoD contractors, and things like that. And they go, it's not worth it to us. We'd be putting too much physical labor into it, too many piece parts, too much assembly time. And it's the profit margin isn't there, and it's not worth it to them. that's where really this stuff shines. You know, you can see in that picture, that is the smallest and lightest ortho mode transducer that functions in the X-band that a commercial producer makes. And if they wanted to make it smaller and lighter, they probably couldn't, not through the methods that they made that with. Ours, if you just go to the ortho mode transducer, we're almost 10x lighter, right? We're you know, a much smaller footprint, but we're getting very similar performance. And so additive shines in those areas where you want to make a small to medium quantity of something that is complex or needs to be done rapidly. That's not what the traditional manufacturing market was set up and made to do, but additive can do. And so we get a lot of that more and more recently. I agree. It did at the beginning, really felt that way of everyone just wanted to see what you could do. And now people are coming and saying, we can't do it any other way. And that's been a nice shift in the industry over the past, you know, 2 years, really.
What a great answer. And I got to tell you, I think we're feeling some of that too. Hey, Scott, I'm going to turn the table on you a little bit. I know you're the guy who asks questions, but I'm going to ask you a question because of what your background is and what you bring to the table here. You're an additive guy. You're a small additive guy, and we're not supposed to talk about that, but you're a small additive guy, which means you don't make lots and lots of layers, like 10,000 layers, but you guys make layers in you know, flexible electronics, and so you are still an additive process. What Zach said was, you know, those who maybe do high volume, but what about us? What about us additive guys? Are we going to play in the high volume? And so from what you're seeing, the way that you guys are working, where do you see high volume in the additive area? How do we get there?
Yeah, you know, Ken, that's a great question. So absolutely, you know, the things that when we think about flexible hybrid electronics, and we take a really expansive view of what we mean by flexible hybrid electronics. So it's anything that uses the same manufacturing technologies, the additive, you know, processing of the conductors and the dielectrics, for example, is one thing, as well as, you know, the discrete components that get placed into the devices. You know, that combination is what we think of as the field. So there are certainly, you know, some high volume applications. High volume, though, I mean, it depends on your field. I mean, if you're making cell phones, high volume is one thing. If you're doing, you know, high volume for the military, if it's not like soldier uniforms or something like that, you know, the numbers are orders of magnitude smaller. But they're still certainly high volume. You're not making them individually. They're not, you know, they're not just, you know, one at a time sort of thing. So, you know, we've got some things that we've made, you know, just for almost for prototyping or early testing where we need thousands of them. And so we're doing that through combinations of different approaches. We do a lot of screen printing. I think Anand was one who showed that, you know, that's 98% of, you know, on that plot that he had, because it's scalable. But we really need some digital approaches. You know, we use the NScript tool in places where we need a digital approach. You know, certainly our initial prototyping is often done that way. But also where you need maybe, you know, little fine pieces, we'll combine workflows that use multiple tools. So via fill, for example, is maybe one thing that we bring it in. But you know, being able to go to you know anywhere from hundreds to thousands to 10,000s for those initial volumes is going to speak to making you know hundreds of thousands or more. Certainly, there are a lot of people that are interested in things like, I don't know, micro LED displays. You can debate whether that's really flexible hybrid electronic or flexible or 3D printed or 3D electronics at all. There's also a good question about whether there's a U.S. manufacturing opportunity for that. Those are certainly some high volume things. Automotive, definitely a place where there's going to be, you know, high volume applications for 3D electronics. You know, whether you're structurally integrating them, putting them onto you know, body panels or automotive structures, distributing sensors, maybe distributing some of the computation as well. We see a lot of applications in aerospace, small UAVs, or even mid to large size UAVs as an example there. And then healthcare is the one that all the market studies, you know, say is going to be one of the giant volume applications for printed electronics and FHE. So don't know if that was terribly specific for you, Ken, but
no, that's perfect. I think the real point is, and what I'm seeing is, number one, it is many of us came in this as pioneers, and so for all of you pioneers, thanks for the arrows in the back. That's, you know, it's a tough place to be out front. Sometimes it's lonely, but it's getting less lonely, and that's what I'm starting to recognize. There's more of us here. The trails are not quite as rough. There's still a lot out in front of us. There's a lot out in front of us. But as we start moving this thing together, all of us are pushing the ball, and we're starting to move that uphill. I want to give a shout out to many of my friends, Mike Master Pietro, from, and I'm gonna miss it, from ACI Materials. He's developing, by the way, on a couple of programs with materials. And as Sudhir said, we're having a materials issue. Zach, I didn't know that you guys were developing materials. What's the matter with you? You're a small company. You can't do that. And so congratulations to all of you guys who are out in front of this thing, because it's really important as we start moving this thing. It's not just about educating. This is really about demonstrating. And this is where we're at today. It is no longer one of those things that where I would go out and I'd say, please let me try this on your behalf. If you'll just let me try. Now I have people hitting on our door and I'm saying, if you'll just let me breathe. And so more and more is happening this way. And that becomes very exciting for the industry. And let me leave with this. So we're gonna start wrapping this up here. I'm gonna have a final word, and then Scott is gonna have a final word, and then John will close this out. But my final word goes back to, there is a market study on 3D printed electronics, and I cannot tell you how important that is to those of us who are pioneering this thing. That means people are starting to embrace it. And so to each and every one of you, you guys are super impressive. Again, thank you for being co-pioneers with us, but we are almost not the pioneers anymore. More and more people are joining us, and that is very exciting. I want to thank my co-host, John Hornick and Scott, for working with us today, and every one of you speakers. This has been my huge privilege to be a part of this. Scott, I'm going to turn it to you for your last words.
Absolutely. Well, I'll start where you ended. Ken, thanks for the invitation to co-host this event with you. Had a blast doing it. I guess the thing that I'd like to point out is that developing devices and developing this field and really pushing things forward requires the input from a whole bunch of different parts of the ecosystem. We need the design capability, we need the fab capability, we need the materials, we need the system integrators, we need the folks that are going to be out there really leading the way with applications that challenge us all. So I appreciate that's what you folks have covered today in your talk. So thanks to all of you, and I think that this is how we're going to continue to drive this field forward and make 3D printed electronics into what I think we all believe it can be, or what we all know it can be. So thanks for having me, and looking forward to next year.
Well, I would like to thank all of the speakers for great presentations, giving us some insights into what you're doing. I'd also like to thank everyone for attending and for the great questions. I think what we started to hear today is about a concept that's starting to emerge. We've heard for years about 3D printing or additive manufacturing. What we're starting to hear about now is 3D manufacturing. I view 3D printing as making parts, not really products, and I view 3D manufacturing as making products, not just parts. And that's what the future of printed electronics really is. It's not printed circuit boards. It's products that have electronics embedded in them or on them. We heard a lot about that today, but we're also starting to hear about this concept of 3D manufacturing. So I hope this was a great program for you. I hope you'll attend when we have one next year. And please share this program on social media, and have a great afternoon.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
for the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you.